Hare Krishna devotees, so let us begin by reciting our dedication. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Saddharma Samstapato Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Sri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Sri Jiva Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarne. Material activity particularly, but not just material activity, also there was mention here and there of how pure devotional service is better than liberation as well. Of course, that was more the focus in the previous chapter, but that's all right. There's some sort of overlapping between chapter 4 and chapter 5, in that even though chapter 4 was titled How Pure Devotional Service is Better Than Liberation, but there was also quite a bit of mention of how it was better than material life also. And in this chapter, the same thing happens. You get both, although there is arguably a bit more on how it's better than material life. So, yes. So we discussed how everyone has the right to be a devotee, and it doesn't really matter what background a person comes from materially. One thing I think I didn't mention in that regard, no, I'm going to go on. So we have we covered the first 8 paragraphs. So we have come to paragraph number 9. And in paragraph number 9, the discussion is focusing on how bhakti is free from karma and jnana, from both karma and jnana. In paragraph 9 itself, Srila Prabhupada discusses how there are 3 main processes for coming to the spiritual platform. There's karma, jnana, and bhakti. So that's paragraph 9. Let's just see, paragraph 9 begins, practically there are 3 processes, just so you can identify where we are in the book right now. Practically there are 3 processes for elevating one to the platform of spiritual consciousness. What? Oh, okay. Wow, all right. Yes. These processes are karma, jnana, and bhakti. Ritualistic performances are in the field of karma, speculative processes in the field of jnana. But one who's taken to bhakti, devotional service, need have nothing to do with karma or jnana. Yes, that's nice. And even even if someone falls down somehow from Krishna consciousness, he doesn't have to do any prayaschita, which is part of karma, ritualistic, materialistic religion. Doesn't have to do that. Just carry on in devotional service. And if the person's sincere and really tries their best, then by Krishna's grace, they'll become situated nicely in Krishna consciousness again. That'll be sufficient for the person's reinstatement. If you remember, we told the story about the thunderbird, the chatak, which will only take mercy from Krishna. Even Krishna sometimes gives thunder and lightning, and even though mercy appears to be available elsewhere, the chatak bird will not take it. Similarly, the devotee will only take mercy from Krishna. So this brings us to paragraph 10, of course. Yeah. And now, what happens now, and basically for the rest of the chapter, is that Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada quote different verses, as we saw in the previous chapter, and as we're going to see, it's fairly frequently done throughout Nectar of Devotion, quoting of verses from Shastra to bring out different points, different perspectives on whatever subject is being discussed at that point in time. So in paragraph 10, in this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami gives evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam. So there we have Lord Krishna speaking to Uddhava. And let's just have a look at this verse. The distinction between qualification and disqualification may be made in this way. Persons who are already elevated in discharging devotional service will never again take shelter of the processes of fruitive activity or philosophical speculation. If one sticks to devotional service and is conducted by regulative principles given by the authorities and acharyas, that is the best qualification. So the point there is, it's a little different from the point discussed in paragraph 9. The point here is qualification. Qualification. Not just if one is going to be inclined to take shelter this way or that, but real qualification is stick to Krishna consciousness. And then paragraph 11. See, what I've suggested here, devotees, is that you note down in each paragraph what is the particular kind of, it's almost like a detail in some cases, the particular perspective which is being drawn out. So now we go on to paragraph 11, which is, it's also actually talking about qualification, but in a slightly different way. The idea here, we'll read the verse, but the idea is, you could note down, that if someone simply takes shelter of Krishna and doesn't do their occupational duty, varnashram duty, then there's no fault. There's no fault. In other words, they haven't lost their qualification, you could say. So it's a slightly different angle that now it's talking about doing your duty in varnashram. So the verse says, even if one doesn't execute a specific occupational duty, but immediately takes direct shelter of the lotus feet of Hari, Krishna, there will be no fault on his part. In other words, no disqualification. And in all circumstances, his position is secure. Even if by some bad association he falls down, still he's not at a loss. Whereas a person who is simply discharging his occupational duty in varnashram without Krishna consciousness is disqualified, doesn't gain the true benefit of human life. So, yeah. So, in other words, Prabhupada says, the purport of all that is that the people who are frantically engaged in material life in this way or that, without knowing that Krishna consciousness is the process which will help them, all they get, the prize they get at the end, repeated birth and death. Haribol. It's the booby prize. You know the booby prize, yeah? It's the stupid prize. Yeah. And we can, the verse which is quoted here is 1st Canto, chapter 5, verse 17. Let us refer to the 1st Canto, chapter 5, verse 19. Which means just 2 verses further on, because it's a really good verse. And who knows, you may be asked about this verse if you're doing the Bhakti Shastri, Nectar of Devotion. So make a note of it. You have been warned. The translation, my dear Vyas, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly doesn't undergo material existence like others, the fruit of workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. So, yeah. So this again, this theme of fall down and what may happen if someone falls down from whatever. Oh, we've lost focus. Yeah. We've lost. Yeah, make it lower, like on my chest. Yeah. Aha. Yeah, so that theme of fall down has come up in a couple of places, from Krishna consciousness, from Varnashram, from different places. But even if a devotee falls down somehow, what happens to them is different from what happens to the other people. So that's 1st Canto, chapter 5, verse 19. It's a good one. So then we go on to paragraph 12, and it's kind of, well, it's not exactly the same, but it is bringing out the point that the people who are just involved on the material platform, they cannot escape the laws of nature. This is kind of the main point, that again, it's a little different perspective on the same subject, that not only can you not escape birth and death, but you can't escape any of the laws of nature, of material nature, if you're engaged in material activity, until you get into devotional service. Then you can. When you develop a loving feeling for Lord Krishna, then you can escape birth and death. And then paragraph, where are we? 13. And here again, it's the same point, but a little different. The idea, the general idea is that a devotee who's taken shelter of Krishna, giving up material duties, is first class, better than any of the other people who are involved in any of the other things and all that. Yeah. Interesting. So again, it's Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Let me just read the verse. My dear Uddhava, any person who takes shelter of me in complete surrender and follows my instructions, giving up all occupational duties, is to be considered the first-class man. So the devotee is the first-class person, escapes the laws of material nature, escapes birth and death, doesn't have to, or is the most qualified, doesn't have to perform all occupational duties. You get the idea. All these different factors and elements in the picture of the devotee and of the materialist. For the devotee, they're all taken care of. And in there, Prabhupada makes the point that generally speaking, people think that people who do philanthropic, ethical, moral, altruistic, political, and social welfare activities, generally people think they're very nice. They're very nice. But if someone, Prabhupada goes on, if someone simply acts in Krishna consciousness, he's considered to be far, far better than those nice people. Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? It is just really wonderful. Which then takes us on to paragraph 14, which, let's see here. All right. Now, this is interesting. It's, again, a bit of a change of focus. And now the focus is that anyone who takes shelter of Krishna and really becomes absorbed in devotional service no longer has any debt to anyone. In this case, well, it just means any debts, really, but particularly mentioned debts to, like, your ancestors. You know, if my father had not worked hard and his father not worked hard, I would not have been brought up in, nothing too special, but comfortable circumstances. It would have been different. So I have a debt to them. I have a debt to them. The demigods, they're arranging so many things. The ancestors, the great sages, our family members, different people just in ordinary society have made arrangements in society which are facilitating us. Even some of you might not like this, but look at all the roads we've got. Many of them are left over from the previous government. Not all, but many, many. They're still going. Yeah. So we have a debt to the National Party. I'm sure many people would not like to hear that. But it's true, at least to some degree. You'd be surprised who you've got debts to if you really go into it. You'll find you've got debts to all sorts of people. So Prabhupada says in the middle of this paragraph 14, the purport is that as soon as someone takes birth, he's immediately indebted to so many sources. Yeah. We've come to Krishna consciousness. We're indebted to Vyasadeva. What to speak of Prabhupada? And this theme, it continues actually in the following paragraph 15. Yeah, all sorts of people. Let's see. There are many other sages like Shankaracharya. Would you believe we're indebted to Shankaracharya? Gautama Muni, Narada Muni. We're obliged to our forefathers because we inherited some property. It's a fact. We're indebted to the people in general, relatives, friends. Prabhupada says even animals. We're even indebted to animals like cows and dogs who render us service. Gosh, it's a complex picture. It is just really a complex picture. But the point is, by executing Krishna consciousness, you fulfill all those debts. They're done. You don't have to worry about, repaying the debt to whoever. You don't have to worry about that. You just practice Krishna consciousness and you are debt-free. But not only are you debt-free, but you are, through Krishna consciousness, at least in some cases, like family members, they will actually receive benefit from your engaging in devotional service. Yeah, spiritual benefit, or it's actually, you could say any type of benefit, different types of benefits will be there. Let's go on to paragraph 16. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same point. Yeah. By the one stroke of devotional service, if you give up all obligations and simply surrender to the Lord, you're no longer a debtor. Yes. Let's go on to the next paragraph 17. It begins in Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, Gospod Taksha Gavarit. That's Russian, by the way. Where were we? Yeah, in Bhagavad Gita also the Lord says, Sarvadhamam Parityajya. You know that verse. Give up everything, just surrender to Krishna. So Krishna, the way Prabhupada focuses on it, in that paragraph, Prabhupada says, one may think that if I just surrender to Krishna, how am I going to repay all those debts? Because, like we mentioned, there's quite a number of debts. How are we going to repay them all? But Krishna in 1866 Bhagavad Gita says, yes, you will. The Lord, Prabhupada says, the Lord says repeatedly, don't hesitate. Don't consider that because you're giving up all other engagements, there will be some flaw in your life. Don't think like that. I will give you all protection. That is the assurance of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. So we're almost at the end, actually, of the chapter. I think it's just 2 more paragraphs, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 2 more. Okay, so anyway, just carrying on the same theme in the second to last paragraph, Agastya Samhita. As the regulative principles of Scripture are not required by a liberated person, so the ritualistic principles indicated in the Vedic supplements are also not required for a person duly engaged in the service of Lord Ramachandra. Das Potretya Harasha Inache Gavara Predne Gospoda Ramachandra. Anyway, okay. In other words, the devotees of Lord Ramachandra or Krishna are already liberated and don't have to follow all the regulative principles. Now, devotees, let us not make a mistake there and think that this is referring, that we don't have to refer to any or some or maybe all of the 4 regulative principles. Sorry. Anyway, excuse me. No, you got to do that. But these other things, like, well, we may have mentioned, we mentioned from time to time at least, how there are all sorts of rules and regulations governing on the material level every aspect of our life and how you do everything. And Prabhupada once was talking about how just for getting up in the morning, just waking up and standing up, just for that, getting to your feet, just for that, there are different rules and regulations and prayers, and you got to face in this direction and do this and that. What to speak of using the toilet? What to speak of brushing your teeth? Do you know the mantras for brushing your teeth? And then the mantras for taking a bath, and the mantras for drying yourself, all the different mantras for tilak, etc., etc. And then what to speak of putting on your clothes, my gosh. These are the rules and regulations. And Prabhupada, one devotee had suggested to Prabhupada that maybe we should apply some more of these things. And Prabhupada said, no, we're not really the type of people. We're kind of slow. We're a bit on the slow side. And so Prabhupada said, if we tried to follow all the rules and regulations just for getting up, as we have said, to the point where now you've got your clothes on and you're ready to do something, Prabhupada said, it would probably take you so long, by the time you finished, it would be time to take rest again at night. These are the rules and regulations that are being referred to. So let's make, and Prabhupada says, not required to follow all the regulative principles mentioned in the ritualistic portions of the Vedic literature. And we come now upon the 19th paragraph, which is the end of the chapter. And it's a similar point. It's a similar point that Karabhajana Muni, where are we? 11th canto. 11th canto, chapter 5, Karabhajana addresses Maharaj Nimi. Right, you got it. My dear king, a person who has given up the worship of the demigods and has completely concentrated his energy in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has become very, very dear to the Lord. As such, if by chance or mistake he does something which is forbidden, there is no need for him to perform any purificatory ceremonies. Because the Lord is situated within his heart, he takes compassion for the devotee's accidental mistake and corrects him from within. So again, this is the theme of fall down and recovering from fall down and getting properly situated again. Yeah. But the main verse, don't forget, the main verse is what? First canto, chapter 5, verse 19. Adin Pyat Devatnatsat. All right, so basically, we have now concluded the 5th chapter, and we have some time. How nice. Isn't that wonderful? And therefore, we are going to move on to the next chapter, which, devotees, is a completely different section of Nectar of Devotion. Yes. Just let me get myself together here. What am I doing? My notes. Bhakti Shastri, that's it.